It's a pleasure to welcome for a wide-ranging one-on-one the former president of the American Enterprise Institute, Arthur Brooks. He's a Harvard professor, a New York Times best-selling author, host of the podcast, The Art of Happiness. He's also featured in the new documentary, Fishing with Dynamite. What does that mean?
Fishing with Dynamite is a documentary. I'm one of the people that they interviewed for the movie. It's an interesting movie. It's a very pro-markets movie, but it recognizes that, we can exploit the system. We can cheat, we can be corrupt if we don't use our morals. Capitalism isn't that savory, or at least it doesn't take care of itself, is the bottom line. It turns out that that's a way of fishing. You can fish with dynamite. You throw a stick of dynamite and all the fish in the lake will come to the surface. You can harvest them, but there's no more fish for anybody is the whole point. And I guess the idea is that a lot of people are kind of fishing with dynamite these days, and we should be better people.
I'm anxious to see it. Okay, let's go. Recent polling shows a vast majority of American voters believe this country is headed in the wrong direction. Do you share that view?
No, I don't. I mean, people have been saying that it's been a kind of a majority of people who've thought that for a long time. It's really bad right now in particular for basically three reasons. Number one is the coronavirus epidemic. Number two is the polarization in politics that's been getting worse since the 2008 financial crisis. And the third is the social unrest that we see right now. And so those events are making people feel really, really pessimistic. We have huge challenges in front of us, but those are big opportunities. I mean, and I know you share this point of view because you're an optimist, Larry. I mean, I've been watching you for years. And what optimists and entrepreneurs see is when everybody else sees these unfortunate circumstances, woe is me, we say, oh, this is a big opportunity to remember who we are as Americans, to make our society better. And I'm kind of excited about that.
My late friend, the great Edward Bennett Williams, though, I asked him once, are you optimistic or pessimistic? He said, of course I'm pessimistic. I'm smart.
Yeah, I know. It's also, my dad used to say that, he used to say, so the gas tank got to halfway and he said, we're going to have to be sleeping by the side of the road. And I'd say, why are you such a pessimist, Dad? And he said, because I like to be pleasantly surprised.
You've asserted that capitalism is the greatest force for human advancement we have. How's it doing in this pandemic?
It's tricky, although I have to say I'm pretty encouraged by the fact that it's capitalism that's going to find the solution to this pandemic. It wasn't capitalism that created it. I mean, the truth is market failures, and we have an authoritarian regime in China that covered up this thing, and it was a real problem for a long time. And we didn't actually cover ourselves in glory in the United States so well the way that we dealt with it. But it's capitalism. It's private drug companies that are going to come up with a vaccine and therapeutics to this thing. It's going to solve this problem for us. So, capitalism isn't always fun. It's not always pretty, but it's lifted 2 billion people out of poverty since you and I were kids, and it's an engine that's going to keep doing just that.
Are you concerned about post-COVID capitalism?
I am, and part of the reason I'm concerned is because we're racking up a huge bill that we're going to have to pay back. And the way that we pay it back is going to be a battleground between people who see the economic system differently. And again, I'm not even to take sides. I just see a continuing battle, using the coronavirus epidemic as an opportunity to change the American system of democratic capitalism. And that actually does worry me. We need a period of American reunification. We need to actually have politicians who are willing to make compromises. I mean, it's astounding to me that we have one party that says that they're willing to go hammer and tongs. One says that we have a corporate tax rate that should be 20%, the other says 30%. And we can't say, look, Americans need a break. Let's agree that for the next 10 years it's going to be 25%, or it's just something that normal people that you would do in a business relationship that our politicians are unable to do. And that's twisting our system and hurting our country.
Why do you think it's so prevalent now? I remember years ago when members of the Senate were friends with each other. They'd go to a weekend, they would have dinner together, and they would learn to compromise. Why are we non-compromisable?
Well, there are a couple of different reasons. One, and I like it, Larry. I'm going to use it from now on. One of the reasons is because of gerrymandering. The fact that we have districts that have been gerrymandered so that there's 0% chance that an incumbent won't win. And so those are blood red or dark blue districts. And when you do that, then you get people who are the most uncompromising people that are elected. So the farthest left people, the farthest right people are elected to those districts. The second reason is that the new media and the media landscape, and people with the way the cable TV and the internet has worked is that it's made it so you can filter out everything you disagree with, and people can cater entirely to what they already thought. And so the result of that is you don't get rewarded as a politician by compromising. You get rewarded by getting clicks and getting on the television network that favors your extreme point of view. And that's all of those things as incentives come together to make it impossible for people. They actually do like each other behind the scenes. Some of them do, but they have to pretend like they don't. It's such a sad state of affairs. It's because of those forces. We have to solve that.
This coming week is the last for which the $600 federal unemployment enhancement is going to be paid. What do you think?
I think that we're coming to a cliff, and I think that it has to come to an end at some point. The problem is that we were hoping that the coronavirus lockdown would be definitively ended by this point, and we're seeing this kind of dislocation. So I think there's a possibility that the Congress will in some way extend some of these benefits so that we don't have such a jagged drop-off. And I think that we're actually going to have to find some way to open up and manage the crisis, notwithstanding the fact that the threat is ongoing. Otherwise, we're going to have a big economic problem in front of us.
A number of Republicans are jumping ship. As a professor of the practice of public leadership, how do you assess Donald Trump as a leader?
Well, Donald Trump is like in the case of most leaders in both democracy and capitalism, they follow the demand of the public. People say that these great corporate leaders are visionary and rolling out these new products. No, they figure out that this is something that people really, really want, and they respond to it. In politics, these politicians, and again, I have for them. God forbid I should have to run for office and be a politician, or you, Larry. It'd be misery. But they're reacting to market signals, and so I see the things that people complain about Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or any populist and polarizing political figures as responding to the signals more than creating the issues. So we need to solve the underlying problem such that we don't keep creating market signals to have politicians that we say we don't like.
But at this point, Arthur, it looks like Trump is out of whack with the majority of Americans thinking.
Yeah, well, Trump is he's a cagey guy, and he's figured out a couple of different things. Number one is by locking down a minority, but potentially a plurality of the American public, and making the other side look scarier. In other words, you like the other guys less than you dislike me. You dislike them more than you dislike me. And number two, we're in a position in the United States where the media does not have the trust of a lot of people on the American right. So, if you call and say, I'm conducting a poll for National Public Radio, a lot of people on the right in Wyoming or someplace are going to hang up on you. And so they're getting 8% response rates. And Donald Trump is counting on the idea that a lot of people are going to vote for him who are not telling pollsters that. And that's certainly what happened last time.
If we look for a classic example of the other side, would it be Mitt Romney?
Which other side? Of Republicans that don't have this point of view?
It's a safe bet Mitt Romney is going to vote for Joe Biden.
I see. Yeah. So there's a lot of counterexamples to what's going on in the Republican Party. Maybe the most distinct counterexample to Donald Trump's brand of republicanism would be George W. Bush. There's George W. Bush was a love-based politician. He loved people. To know George W. Bush is to love him. And because he loves people. He's not necessarily, people don't agree with his policies necessarily. People didn't like his presidency necessarily, but he is somebody who sees as his sacred duty to bring people together and to lift them up. And not everybody sees their sacred duty in that particular way. And when you're in a populist time in American politics, on both right and left, you're not going to find major politicians who have that fundamental philosophy very often.
What will I see when I watch Fishing with Dynamite?
Fishing with Dynamite is a wonderful little documentary, and I didn't make it. I was just in it, but I was delighted when I actually saw it at the end. Fishing with Dynamite talks about how the capitalist system requires morals before markets. It's a very pro-markets movie. And I'm very pro-markets myself. I mean, capitalism is a miracle. Democratic capitalism in particular is just an incredible thing. But in the wrong hands, where people are twisting and where we have crony capitalism and where people are actually corrupt, it can be really a curse. And so it talks about morals coming before markets. It's actually a nice thing. It's on iTunes and on Apple TV already, and people can go watch it. But basically, it'll give you an idea of how you can support capitalism. At the same time, you can support basic morality. Things are not at odds.
When you look at what's going on with protests and the like, and the virus and the conflict, and do you fear a government possibly in turmoil if Trump Trump chooses not to leave the White House, let's say, which a lot of
Yeah,
people are
I
saying
don't.
this is the kind of guy may
I
not
know,
leave.
but again, yeah, I know. I've read that a lot, but I just don't see it. He's going to leave. He's going to follow the typical constitutional process. I mean, he says provocative things, but I don't see any indication that the people around him would suggest that we should have we should effectively circumvent the constitutional process, the peaceful transfer of power. If Joe Biden wins the presidency, Donald Trump will leave on Inauguration Day, and they'll shake hands, and Donald Trump will go back to New York. That's my boring prediction, Larry.
You don't see him barricading the office.
I don't see it. I just don't see it. I mean, it makes for good Twitter, but I mean, and Donald Trump he'll say provocative things that people can overinterpret along those lines. But I strongly doubt we're going to be facing that eventuality.
Arthur, thanks for your time today. Great having you with us.
Great to see you, Larry, as always.